The question should be answered yes or no. It is simplicity itself, Watson. We have answered all the questions. Cabby!
Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson, I feel relieved that everything is settled. The inspector told me that you were not as useful as you had hoped in this case, but you did your best, and I am grateful to you.
Dear Lestrade, well, the inspector deliberately minimized my role in this matter, so that I could reveal a secret to you.
I wish Lieutenant Harrington could be here now, but...
He had to leave for London on a very urgent business.
But how could you know?
It is my business to know, Miss Bromsby. Thus I am able to tell you about the case of the silver earring. Everything begins on that sad afternoon, which was to celebrate your birthday, and ended with the untimely death of your father. Miss Bromsby, you did not murder your father. I kissed your hand that day, and did not detect even the slightest smell of gunpowder. I also discovered powder traces that proved the shot was fired from behind the second side door. You were not seen at that door, but where did the murderer go after taking his shot? Everyone who tried to exit through the side entrance found it blocked. According to witnesses and other evidence, none of the guests could have possibly been the murderer, because they were all present in the ballroom. No one left through the service door, and traces confirm that no one could have fled by using the staircase. The windows in the kitchen, as elsewhere in the manor, were appointed with thick bars, thus they offered no escape. So did he vanish into thin air? In fact, one of the parties did leave the ballroom and went to the kitchen corridor. He left to meet his accomplice, who was not an invited guest. This accomplice was a professional actor who was disguised to resemble our missing invitee. This guest hid under voile in the shadow of a statue and waited for his moment. Meanwhile, his twin acted out his part in the ballroom and provided the murderer with a perfect alibi. When the killer heard the applause, he left his hiding place, aimed, took his shot, and hit his target. It is important to know that the actor was well placed at the manor. He secured entry to the manor by impersonating a French head waiter. Using his position, he persuaded those in charge to use long tablecloths and to arrange the tables in a most peculiar manner. When the shooting occurred, our actor joined the crowd and rapidly crept across the room, concealed under the tables. As he neared the side door, he rose from beneath the last table and acted as if he had been jostled and fallen. However, As he stood, he accidentally snagged a small piece of his dirty glove upon a chair. When he arrived at the door, which was held closed by the murderer, he tapped on it using a prearranged code and was allowed entry. He exited to the corridor while his partner continued to hold the door shut against all others. The actor discarded his disguise in the deep kitchen well, helped himself to 2 bottles of excellent whiskey, and quietly went outside. The assassin waited several minutes. Then, in the last seconds of the confusion, he returned to the ballroom. Thus, we have the crime committed by an individual whom everyone swears was in the room when the shot was fired.
But this agrees with my conclusions. Richard is an actor, and everyone swears that Grimble was in the room. I didn't consider the course of events as you described, Holmes, but admit it, our deductions agree. Moreover, both of these suspects are similar in size and manner.
Your theory presumes that Grimble is an excellent shot, which is false. It also takes on faith that Sir Bromsby had discovered the misappropriations, supplying Grimble his motive, but irrefutable proof that neither Grimble nor Richards were guilty waited at Horace Fowlett's, the matter of his pillow.
But there was no pillow at Horace Fowlett's.
Nevertheless, Mr. Fowlett slept with one. When I arrived at his home, I believed him already dead. Therefore, the news of his hasty departure came as no surprise. From the evidence obtained at his home and the statements of his neighbour, I learned the following. On the evening of his death, Mr. Fowlett was visited by a man who desired to sell him some exotic trifle. While this man distracted Mr. Fowlett, a second man quietly crept into the house and tried to open his safe. This individual was well acquainted with the house and the location of the safe, but when he failed to open it, he most likely became enraged and killed Mr. Fowlett. This individual, Miss Bromsby, was your cousin, Wyatt Collins, who returned to England under the name Johansson.
But what about this pillow?
Mr. Fowlett's pillow had vanished. Later, Dr. Watson discovered a feather from the pillow in the train compartment used by the man who impersonated Fowlett. But why did Fowlett's impersonator take the pillow, and why didn't the station manager notice it? Mr. Fowlett was short, but very portly. In order to imitate him, the man used the pillow to create the appearance of a stouter man. There is no other explanation. This man was a much leaner man than Mr. Fowlett, Mr. Grimble, or Mr. Richards.
Then, Holmes, who did murder Sir Bromsby? And for what reason?
You'll see, Lestrade, when it's a question of multiple murders, except for the deviant ones, there are 2 primary motives, revenge and greed. Wyatt Collins' presence at Fowlett's tells us his motive was about Bromsby's wealth. He went there for the express purpose of stealing the will so that he would receive at least a portion of Bromsby's estate. If his uncle had died with no will found, Collins would have been entitled to a share of the inheritance under English law.
But if my cousin failed in his attempt and the evidence clears my name, though I am to inherit, why were my father and cousin murdered? Besides, tomorrow I am to announce my engagement and will be married soon.
Holmes, hold on. There is a flaw in your reasoning. There is only one key for the door to the cement factory, and Grimble is the only person known to have it. So he must be directly involved in the murder of Collins.
Is that true, Lestrade? Mr. Richards told me that there was indeed a second key which was lost. And have you forgotten the murder of the barman hunter? A young man without any criminal record, whose sole interests were painting and flowers. Why was he murdered in cold blood, with no signs of forceful entry or theft at his lodgings? Simply put, he was killed because he was present when your father was murdered. But why Hunter? What did he see or hear? And above all, how did he acquire the earring of Miss Veronica Davenport, the leading actress of the Fairfax Theatre and Dwight Richards' mistress?
I can stand this no more. My thoughts are dazed. Will you finally reveal who murdered my father?
The murderer? Here he comes now.